Again, thank you for such a kind introduction. I am super excited to talk about virtual facilitation with you guys. This is my passion, so it's a treat for me. I have an ambitious agenda for us. I am hoping to cover the value of facilitation done well, fundamentals of facilitation, facilitator competencies, facilitation process and tools, virtual facilitation mindset, tools and techniques, touch on Scrum events, and talk to you about how you can advance your knowledge further. I'm going to conclude with a list of actions you can take in order to continue on your journey and growing in appreciation and knowledge of facilitation. So I like to say that facilitation is making the world a better place, one meeting at a time, which might seem like a big statement. But think about it. How many boring, unproductive, long meetings have you been to, especially lately, especially with our old virtual state of affairs? And it doesn't have to be this way. As facilitators, we can change that, and we can have meetings that are productive and even joyful. So why do we care about facilitation skills? What can facilitation skills do for us and for our teams? Well, they can help us to boost productivity, help our team to boost collaboration, help us achieve better results, save time, and even have fun. And usually when I talk about facilitation to live audiences, this is the moment where everybody laughs because people don't believe that it's possible to have fun in meetings. And hopefully we're going to see it today. So fundamentals of facilitation. How did it start and what the heck is it? So facilitation is simply helping a group to achieve an agreed upon outcome. It is a relatively new discipline. It was only in 1980s that facilitation emerged as a separate discipline. And it was only in 1993 that International Association of Facilitators was born. So what is facilitator and what does a facilitator do? Facilitator is more than anything else an enabler of the group. The facilitator guides the group to consensus and contributes structure and process. Also a very important point, facilitator is content neutral. Now, what does it mean? It means that I don't need to be a subject matter expert on what the meeting is about in order to skillfully and effectively facilitate it. Now, there is a lot of confusion about the word to facilitate. Pretty much every day I hear someone say, I just facilitated a training. That's not the right way to use this word. There is actually a very important distinction between facilitation and training. So let's see what this distinction is. When you're inviting someone to conduct a training for your team, for example, a Kanban training, can you have a good training if the trainer does not know Kanban very well or at all? I hope not. That would not be a really great experience for anyone, right? But with facilitation, if you're inviting me to conduct a retrospective for your team, I am able to facilitate this Scrum event skillfully, even though I might not know much or anything about the product that your team is developing. So in case of facilitation, the team or the meeting participants will be contributing the content and the subject matter expertise. I will be contributing the process. So I will build the container, but what the container is filled with depends on you and your team. Does it make sense? So International Association of Facilitators that you just met took the time to develop core facilitator competencies. Now, those competencies are organized in 6 clusters. And I would like to get us started with looking at those 6 clusters. So the first cluster is called Create Collaborative Client Relationships. This one is going to be the most relevant for those of you who are external facilitators. So perhaps you have your independent practice as Agilists and facilitators and coaches, and you are invited in various organizations to facilitate Scrum events and meetings, amongst other things. So before you can get anything done for that organization, you will need to create trust with the sponsors of the meeting. Now, when you're an inside Agilist, coach, or facilitator, you most likely already have the trust with the sponsors, although I would never take it for granted. The second cluster is called Plan Appropriate Group Processes. This is supremely relevant for Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. So what is an appropriate group process? I like to say that most meetings actually fail before they ever started. Why is that? Because no time or insufficient time and effort has been spent to design a meeting in advance. You need to design your meeting and figure out how long it's going to be, what processes you're going to be using, how you're going to structure the time. You will be developing a timed agenda. You will be deciding when the breaks are and what collaboration platforms and techniques you will be using as a group. And it's on that foundation that a good meeting is going to be built. The third cluster of competency is called Create and Sustain a Participatory Environment. What does this mean? It is our job as facilitators to ensure that every voice is heard in a meeting. When you have people who over-participate, if you will, dominate the conversation, it is my job as a facilitator to ensure that they don't take away the breathing room from quieter voices, to ensure that everybody is engaged, participating, and it's a safe space. Fourth cluster is called Guide Group to Appropriate and Useful Outcomes. So as you probably know very well from your experience, meetings are going to be derailed. People are going to go down into the weeds. People are going to disagree with each other. People are going to go on a tangent. And it will be your job as a facilitator to bring the group back to your desired outcome and to remind the group that, hey, we are running behind. We have an agenda. We have 6 more topics to cover. We need to move on. It's going to be your job to say, you know what, this discussion is awesome and it is not relevant for the desired outcome of this meeting. Let's put it into parking lot and you guys can follow up later on. Competencies cluster number 5, build and maintain professional knowledge. That's pretty easy to understand what it is. In facilitation, like in any area, it is not enough to take a bunch of classes in the beginning, gain a little experience, and you're set for life, right? You will always need to continue learning and growing. Now, think about what happened with the pandemic. You had professional facilitators who might have been facilitating face-to-face all of their professional life. And then overnight, they have been thrown into a virtual universe. So they had to learn very, very quickly. And unless they had a positive mindset about that, that was a painful process, right? You have this knowledge base, you iterate a facilitator face-to-face, and then all of a sudden, all we have is the virtual universe. And then the 6th competency, model positive professional attitude. What is this about? Well, not every participant in your Scrum events or in your meetings is going to be courteous and professional. And you are going to need to model professional behavior. People are going to look up to you as a facilitator and model their behavior on yours. Sometimes it's easier said than done, but that's our job. We can never be unprofessional. Even if someone is being unprofessional to us, even if we have a hostile meeting participant. Sometimes we use sense of humor. Sometimes we use our extensive bag of tips and tricks, but we address the situation creatively and always professionally. So I am going to stop for a moment and see what kind of questions we are getting. Let's see. So far, I don't see too many questions. Let's see. Okay. Any burning questions? Anything I said didn't make any sense? How do you deal with situations where others don't speak? So Jane, this is a terrific question. And you'll be happy to hear that this question is asked so often that I dedicated a special slide to just this situation. So if I can ask for your patience for just a few minutes, I think you're going to be happy. This is the #1 frequently asked question, believe it or not, and you're just confirming it. By the way, if you would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do so. I would be super happy to connect with everyone. I am going to drop the link to my profile here in the chat. And if we have a situation when I don't get to all the questions today, if we run out of time, I'm very happy to continue the conversation on LinkedIn platform. All right, and with that, I am going to run back. And please continue dropping your questions into chat so that you don't forget them. All right, so meeting design and preparation. I would like to show you the basic process for two things: for designing a meeting and for facilitating a meeting. So it's a two-step process, if you will. When you are designing a meeting, you're going to be asking a series of questions. Here's what you're going to be asking. Why? Why are we having this meeting? What is our desired outcome? This is probably the most important questions. And it is to the desired outcome that you will be bringing your group back to when they get lost down in the weeds. Second question you're going to be asking is there anything we will be producing? Is there a deliverable or an output? Let's say we have a new product with a ton of issues, and there is disagreement on the team about what issues need to be addressed first. So an output that we might be producing for such a meeting would be a list of top 10 issues that we need to address first. That's our output. Third question, who needs to be there? Now, again, you're probably super familiar with this phenomena. Everybody and their mama are in the meeting and the decision makers are not there. We forgot to invite them, or they told us they can't come in the very last minute. So it's our job as a facilitator to not invite any stakeholders who don't need to be there, and to explain to stakeholders that do need to be there how important their presence is. Number 4 is probably the most interesting and the most challenging. What risks are we going to face in this meeting? So, what issues are we likely to experience, and how can we mitigate those issues? For example, let's say there are a couple of people on the team that are in a state of conflict, and they have a history of bringing the stuff out in the meetings, derailing the meetings, right? If you know that this is the risk, rather than sitting there praying like, gosh, I hope John and Jim don't get going at it again, like they did five last times, you approach them before the meeting and you ask them, hey, here is what I noticed, here is what I observed. How can we take care of this before the meeting? Do we need to have a short conversation? Do we need to have a conflict resolution session? How can we reach some common ground? So, this proactive approach is treasure trove. How and when? This is you producing the timed agenda for your meeting and deciding what the process is going to be. So, for example, in our example with deciding what the top 10 issues with our product are, how is this going to be done? Are we going to have around the table discussion, around the virtual space discussion about what people think the top issues are and why? We will need to limit the time for that. We'll need to decide how many minutes every person will have. And then we'll probably need to come up with a voting process. How are we going to do this? Hey, we used to vote with dots. We can't really do this now. So what voting mechanism are we going to use? And then 6, where used to be physical space, now it's virtual space. How are we going to set it up? What platform are we going to meet on? Are we going to be meeting on Zoom? Are we going to be meeting on Microsoft Teams? Are we going to be meeting on something else? What collaborative tools do we need to bring into our space? There are some collaboration tools built into Zoom, and I will show them to you, but there are others as well. It's collaborating in a Google Doc. Do we need to use Mural or Mural? What do we need to use? Do we need to use Jamboard? Let's decide in advance, pluses, minuses, decide and use. What voting tools are we going to be using? Hey, we can be as simple as using built-in Zoom polls, or we can poll everywhere. We other tools. How do we want to do this? Perhaps we can use Whiteboard and annotate within Zoom itself to vote. All of those things need to be decided in advance. And as you're gaining more and more experience in the field, it will be easier to decide between multiple tools. So this is the basic process of facilitating a meeting. We already talked about the first circle, right? This is design and prepare. Then you need to open a meeting in a meaningful way. You need to state the desired outcome. You need to be excited. Your energy needs to be contagious. If the facilitator is bored with what's going on, I guarantee you that the team is going to be bored and disengaged in multitasking like there is no tomorrow. You need to tell the people how achieving the outcome of this meeting is important and what value does it bring to them. Very, very important to start on the right note. Then you do the actual facilitation. Then you need to close in a meaningful way as well. What have we accomplished? What are the next steps? And then when the meeting is over, the job is not done yet, right? You will need to share decisions made, action items, any deliverables that you guys produced, the well-discussed list of top 10 issues with your product or whatever it is that you are producing. And then you also need to look back at this whole affair and say, this is where I did well. This is where I did well. This is where I messed up in a major way. And this is how I'm going to preclude it from happening again. Your basic inspect and adapt, right? Here's an example of a very simple timed meeting agenda. You will notice that it has not only the time slots, but also the duration of each time slot. Now, you might say this is overkill, but it actually helps to balance out the content. As you're looking at the big picture of this meeting, you will say, aha, okay, so am I giving enough time to technical issues? Do we need to bump this time up? Are we spending too much on communication issues? And you know, because you know your team or you know your group. Very, very important to honor your agenda, right? One thing that I'm witnessing very often, and I'm invited to observe and evaluate facilitation by others a lot. And what I see is that the agenda is there, it's beautiful, nobody's paying any attention to it, and the meeting falls apart. So that's a risk to be aware of and to mitigate. So, tools and techniques. Meeting preparation checklist is a lifesaver. Again, as you're gaining more experience, it will take you less time to produce those. The 6 questions are great to use for preparing your meeting preparation checklist. You're creating your agenda. In the beginning of the meeting, you're going to be co-creating ground rules for your space. Now, if this is the team that you are working with on a regular basis, you will probably create ground rules that will apply to most of your meetings. When you're invited to facilitate a standalone meeting, you will need to do it in the beginning of every session. So what kind of ground rules am I talking about? It might be something as simple as, hey, let's promise to each other to not multitask. I promise that I am not going to be working on something else. I'm with you for 60 minutes. I give you the gift of my full attention. Are you willing to do the same? This is your agreement from everybody. And it can be something as super important as when we have a round the room, round robin discussion, we agree that a person who shared their opinion is not going to start sharing again till everyone got to contribute. You're going to be managing the energy and the time. Nobody's surprised about the time management component. People are very surprised about the energy. What the heck is this? How do I do this? You need to be super aware of where the group is energy-wise. Are people getting tired? Are people getting bored? Are you losing them? Did everybody turn off their video? Are people starting to take breaks because you didn't give them breaks? Be aware of that, right? And there are natural energy slumps, like after lunch, for example. And those are the moments when you need to do an icebreaker, when you need to invite people to engage in physical activity, a break for an exercise, a break for a breathing exercise, or let's all stand up and do something together. So just be creative and be aware that this is hard on people. Many people on Zoom all day long. So have compassion for them and for yourself. Facilitators tired too. Facilitators need something fun and creative as well, right? You are going to have people in your meetings that are not always going to cooperate with you, right? And as a facilitator, that's just kind of part of facilitator life. Be at peace with that and have tools and plans on how to address that. So let's say you have a person who's been totally disruptive and negative in your meeting. Anything that's been brought up, any ideas that are being brought up, no, it will not work. No, this will not work. Interrupting, talking over people, you know the type. You've seen him or her many, many times in your meetings. So there are various techniques for addressing this, right? One technique is to simply say, hey, so here is our desired outcome. Let's go back to what we're trying to accomplish here, right? Um, is our current movement serving us? Is it helping us to achieve our desired outcome? For many people, just a general reminder like that might work. For some people, it doesn't. You might need to actually ask the person, like, hey, would you be willing to give a chance to those ideas? I hear you, you have 20 years experience, you think that this is not going to work, but give them the benefit of the doubt, right? If this doesn't work, you might need to take a break in the meeting and approach the person individually and invite them to help you. Say, look, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Are you willing to help me out? Right? Please let others contribute. Please don't tell them that their ideas are not going to work. Right? Facilitation tools. As we already mentioned, you will choose your platforms, your voting tools, collaboration tools. You're also going to be using facilitation techniques, brainstorming, you're going to be building consensus, you're going to be using icebreakers. Boosting interactivity and engagement, that's the holy grail. How do we do that? So I am going to stop sharing here for a moment. Oh, I see maybe a few people on video. Hi, thank you for being on video. Yay, hello, thank you, Paul. Paul even waved back. Okay, Paul likes me. I like you too, Paul. Thank you. And John waved at me. Thank you. All right. So you guys can see how most people are not on video, right? And so if I was actually facilitating the meeting with you, I would invite you and ask you in the beginning, like, hey guys, we're trying to accomplish this big thing. It is very difficult to stay fully engaged without video. Would you be willing to give me a benefit of the doubt? Would you come on video, right? And people react very positively to that. Now, somebody might tell you, hey, I didn't comb my hair today, so I don't want to come on video. That's okay, right? You always need to show compassion to people. You do not want to push anything, right? And then you also have people who prefer to contribute verbally without being on video. Honor that as well. But in general, do ask, can we all come together? You know, it's such a relief to see faces. It's so good to see faces rather than black squares, right? What are the different ways we can boost interactivity? There are all kinds of little tools that are so simple and they make a world of difference. So, for example, let's say I asked you to show me what your favorite reaction on Zoom is. The little reaction button at the bottom of the screen, here's mine. That's my favorite. It's a heart. So let's see. I think John is going to respond to me. Paul is going to respond. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Jane. Jane, I like yours. Yeah. And Carla. Yes, that's a really good one. And thank you. Thank you, Mustafa. Aha. Yeah. Let's see. Ah, JT. I like this one. Woo. Okay. So this is one, right? And you can always ask a question, sometimes a funny question, and ask for people's reaction, right? And then another thing you can do, and that's one of my favorite icebreakers. It's so simple, and people are always surprised by it. You can ask people to click on the three dots in the top right corner of their Zoom square and change their name from their name to how they're feeling or anything else you decide. So oftentimes when I come to a new group, the first thing I'm going to ask them to do is, hey, can you rename yourself from your name to how you're feeling right now? So I'm doing this right now. I'm changing, and I'm not Maria Fafard anymore. I'm excited. Let's see, is anybody going to follow along? Help me out here, people. Let's see. I'm looking. And again, the way I did this, I clicked on the three dots in the top right corner of my Zoom square. And I renamed myself from Maria to excited. I will rename myself back. Okay. And then another simple engagement technique, rather than asking people to speak when they're tired of speaking or that's not their preference, hey, here's a question I posed for the group. Can you all drop your responses into the chat? So let's do this. Question is, what do you hate the most about meetings? Yes, I see interested. Thank you. Yes, and I see inspiring. Thank you. That's awesome to see. Happy. Thank you, Happy. Okay. So go ahead and in the chat, drop what you hate the most about meetings. I'm going to get us started. Too many of them in a day. Too long. Thank you, Carla. Long and boring and talkative. Yes. Ineffective, Max. Yeah, that's the killer. No time to be off. Meetings with no agenda. Oh my gosh, don't get me started. I refuse to come. If there's no agenda, I don't come. Will this PowerPoint be sent to those that are in attendance? That will be a question to our ever so gracious hostess with the mostest. Too serious? Meetings for the sake of it. Boring and not interactive. Attendees that wait just to say something praising senior attendees. Wow, that sucks. Long, boring. Okay, you see the themes, right? And you see how a moment ago it was quiet here, very quiet. Now you get to see what your fellow attendees are thinking and dealing with. And when it's massive meetings, this is really helpful because it also allows you to see the themes. Here's what people are dealing with. Here's what we need to address. You can also use Zoom polls. That's a very good tool, very simple. You don't need to have any additional apps or tools, just the poll button at the bottom of your Zoom. Another interesting, and again, so simple but so effective trick is to play with Zoom backgrounds. Some teams have Zoom background battles. Hey, my Zoom background is better than yours. You can ask a question. You can say, can you set a background to your favorite movie? Or can you set your background to your favorite place on earth? Or can you set your background to show me how you feel today? All of those little playful things really help people to get engaged again and again, right? So if I asked you to show me your favorite Zoom background, let's see how many people would do that. I'm going to change mine. Here's my favorite Zoom background, San Francisco, and I'm not in San Francisco, and I'm in Alexandria, Virginia. Meetings for the sake of meetings, boring, not valuable, participants not engaged. Ew, I hate it when participants are not engaged. So let's learn about engagement. I am going to go back in here. I think there was one cluster of questions right before I asked my question here. Let's see. What are some of the ways internal Agile coaches can align stakeholders from different teams during change management? Many times bringing everyone to the same page is a challenge. Any exercises or practices that proves beneficial? We can absolutely talk about this. Thank you, Aradhana. I hope I didn't mess up your name. If I did, fix me. Tell me how to pronounce it. So, back to the jungle of the presentation. So one question that I'm asked all the time is, what are your favorite tools? What platforms should we use? What is the best engagement tool, best collaboration tool? And I'm nervous that people are getting lost in the tools. Your mindset is actually infinitely more important. If the facilitator is hating life because it's all virtual, guess what? The attendees are going to be hating life as well, 10 times so, right? A much more helpful perspective is, hey, this is a massive experiment. How can we make it better? How can we make it creative? How can we make it playful, right? So, but if you do want to talk about tools, we can talk about tools for a second. So you will need a platform to meet on. You will need a platform to collaborate with, and you will need a voting and engagement tool, right? All of those have their strengths. All of those have their weaknesses. I have a weakness for Zoom. I have a weakness for poll everywhere. For collaboration, I use various things. I do think that Zoom whiteboarding is fantastic and underutilized. Most people don't even know where it is and how to use it. Virtual facilitation tips and techniques. Check in with your people. How are they doing, right? Don't presume that they're okay and engaged. Check, ask them. Notice the body language. If there is no body language because everybody is on video, that's already a clue. Ensure that everybody is comfortable with the tech solutions you're using, right? Just because we're in tech world doesn't mean everybody is equally comfortable with everything we're bringing in, right? Honor the breaks. Do not tell people we're coming back in 10 minutes. Everybody's going to forget that. Some people are going to come back in 20. Say we're coming back at 10:45 a.m. Eastern time, which is especially important when your team is in various time zones. And then you drop it into your chat so that it stays there. And when the person who missed the announcement comes back to the computer, they see when they're supposed to come back. Breakout rooms are super, super powerful. If you can switch up the pace and do main room, then breakouts, then main room again, then breaks out again, it's an awesome, awesome tool. You can brainstorm in small groups and then come back to the large group. When you give instructions in the main room, drop them into chat, because guess what? The chat is going to follow people into breakouts. Don't presume that just because you said something once, everybody heard you, everybody understood you. Give instructions verbally, give instructions in writing, put it on the slide, put it in the chat. Zoom world, we already touched on some of it. I want to honor the question that was asked earlier. How do I engage my quiet meeting participants? So this is asked a ton. First thing I like to touch on is the fact that putting a label on someone is not helpful, right? I hear people actually saying to somebody's face, you're such an introvert, you never participate. After that, the person totally shuts down, right? In is actually a spectrum. It's a continuum and it's a preference, right? We have a preference for introversion or extroversion, but it should never be a label. So the biggest answer here is, how do you create a good environment for people to engage in? If I come to your meeting, would I want to engage, right? What does it mean? Sometimes 2 or 3 loud voices dominate the conversation, so that the more reflective, more introspective types, quiet, so-called quiet types, they just don't want to fight with those 2 or 3 loud voices. It's my job as a facilitator to say, hey, let's make sure that everybody is heard. I have noticed that people are continuing to contribute multiple times, even though we set a ground rule that we do not speak for the second time before everybody had a chance to contribute. I've done this yesterday. And you know what? No matter how many times you do it, it's amazing how powerful it is. I was facilitating a meeting yesterday, and several people were not contributing. And the moment I created the space for them to contribute, and the moment I specifically invited them to contribute, they had beautiful, brilliant ideas. And it would be such a shame if we didn't get to hear that. But it was my job to tell the over enthusiastic people, hey, this was awesome. I appreciate your enthusiasm. Let's hear from everybody. And of course, you do it gently, you do it diplomatically. Another interesting aspect is that some people do not like to speak, but they're super happy to contribute in writing. You can also say, hey, if you wish, you can send me your ideas in writing before meeting, during meeting, after meeting. Some people are not comfortable sharing ideas in public, so they would actually send me ideas as a private message on Zoom, and I would read it to the group. So be very flexible, help people to be comfortable. Did I answer this question? I think it was Carla who asked it. Create a safe environment for everyone to contribute. Real quick, for Scrum events, once you start learning about this facilitation mindset, once you start understanding the centrality of understanding the desired outcome, approaching your meetings with a facilitative mindset, you're going to be approaching your Scrum events very, very differently. You're going to be much more creative. You're going to see them in a different light. About every Scrum event, you're going to be asking, what's the target outcome? And what are we doing to get there? What are the creative solutions and tools that can get us there, right? Also, a couple of words about certifications and classes. As awesome as our time together has been, at least one person enjoyed it, that was me. How do you learn more? 90 minutes is not enough. So if you're interested in an Agile specific facilitation certification, your best bet is to start with International Consortium of Agile Certified Professional in Agile Team Facilitation, ICP ATF. It's a basic certification. You attend a class for 2 days. It's going to be focused on facilitating specific Scrum events. Boom, you're certified. Now, if you're passionate about facilitation in general and your interest is wider than Agile universe, then you might want to look at Certified Professional Facilitator, CPF. It's an advanced certification and it's relevant for everyone. So it goes wider than Agile. It is a hard certification to acquire. For classes, I really like leadership strategies. It's a consultancy in Atlanta, Georgia. They have very good classes. And if you don't have money to pay for classes, they have fantastic free webinars. If you had fun today, consider my virtual facilitation classes. Drop me a note on LinkedIn to request information, and I will let you know as soon as we set the dates for 2021 classes. Professional organizations, International Association of Facilitators that I already mentioned. My favorite book about facilitation is by Michael Wilkinson, The Secrets of Facilitation. I can't recommend it high enough. It is advanced. It's like a facilitation Bible. Love it. And Leadership Strategies blog is also fantastic. The same guys that are doing classes and free webinars are also doing really, really nice articles and sharing resources on their blog. And it doesn't cost anything. Bringing it all together. People actually like to print out this slide and then they go and check what they took care of already. Expand and diversify your facilitation experience. Explore facilitation classes. Consider getting a mentor. Join International Association of Facilitators. local groups. LinkedIn is a fantastic and underutilized resource. International Association of Facilitators has a very nice group, and the resources shared there are super helpful. Connect with other facilitators. Now, once you're more comfortable with facilitation, train your team members. Shadow other facilitators, which is easier than ever with our virtual state. Read about facilitation, reflect on your experience, and the most important part, have fun. I like to conclude with this quote: a meeting without a facilitator is as likely to succeed as a product without a product manager. That always gets me laughter in live audiences, and I will hope somebody smiled here as well. If you would like to connect with me, I am super happy to connect on LinkedIn. And you are also very welcome to follow me on Twitter.